All right. Welcome back to Son of a Sports. And today we're going to take a look at each NFL team and put them in tiers for what their expectations are for next season, in my opinion. Obviously, a team could surprise me or anyone. Obviously, the draft hasn't happened yet. This is post free agency or the first wave of free agency. But as someone with absolute knowledge about the NFL, I'm going to do my best to find the most accurate fit for each team in my tier list. And I know what a lot of you are going to say, son of a, why are you doing this now? Son of a, it's like the end of March. Son of a, your girlfriend's cheating on you. I know. But let's get into it. So tier one, I'm obviously going to go with the Kansas City Chiefs. I think everyone feels that way right now. Maybe some people have like beliefs that their team could win it. I'm going to go with the Kansas City Chiefs. Just my opinion. I think they get the three-peat as of today. I like the moves they made so far. I like the commitments they've made. I really, really like it, and I'm excited to see what they do in the draft. That photo of Josh and Lamar look like they're kissing. Sorry. So this is the Super Bowl contenders tier two. Bills and Ravens. Those are the first two I showed in my graphic. And honestly, those are the two that I would say are the two favorites outside of Kansas City for me. Lamar, they're committing to him fully offensively. And I think Harbaugh said it himself. They really want to look in that direction. Next off, the Bills. Obviously, the Bills have made a lot of changes this offseason, but I'm never going to count them out as a Super Bowl contender as long as Josh Allen's healthy and their quarterback. I really like that they're committing to trying to be financially flexible and looking long term because Josh's contract, yes, it hurts for a few more years, but I always think he's going to put him in position for a Super Bowl. Let's talk about the others. Next off, Philadelphia Eagles. They have made moves this offseason so far, especially in free agency, that absolutely terrify me as a Cowboys fan. I am terrified because the Eagles have rebuilt their secondary with C.J. Gardner-Johnson. Bryce Huff gives them the flexibility to trade Hassan Reddick. They believe Nolan Smith can come in and be in this more rotational role than he was last year. Josh Sweat is still staying with the Eagles. They're going to go in the draft, and now they have the flexibility to go draft a corner and be able to believe that next year their team will be different. They won't have that bad of a roster. And Vic Fangio is who I've been so excited about for the Dolphins just because I wanted to see the Dolphins be good. And now he's that guy for them, for the Eagles. And, all right, Bengals. Joe Burrow's coming back healthy. Jamar Chase is Jamar Chase. They have a top 20 pick. They got some O-line pieces this offseason. I think if they're able to get someone like Brock Bowers, I move them up even higher. I know T. Higgins, that whole situation, but I think the Bengals with Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase will always be contenders. Same thing like with the Bills. Next off, 49ers. I think it's pretty clear. I mean, I just want to say this is not an order. This is just who's in this tier. And the 49ers, they were just in the Super Bowl, and they're a very good team. Their only big losses were Eric Armstead and Chase Young. So they added Leonard Floyd to help with the rotational pieces. They're still going to believe in their defense. They have a first-round pick this year. I really like what they're doing. They're continuing building around Purdy and Shanahan and just building around both sides of the ball as best as they can. All right, the Lions. $70 million in cap space, and they went out and got DJ Reader, who I think is one of the most underrated signings of the offseason. I know he got hurt last year, but he was already one of the most underrated players in the NFL. They boosted their secondary with a trade for Carlton Davis. They have a first-round pick this year. Well, they already did, but they're a developing team that's getting better and better and better, and we're in the NFC Championship and would have won it if they just held on a little bit longer. I really believe in what the Lions are doing, and I'm going to put them in Super Bowl contender for the years to come. Next off, Houston Texans. And some people are like, why? I think it's clear, though. Danielle Hunter, Will Anderson, insane pass rush attack. Will Anderson is a 22-year-old in a 32-year-old man's body. And I mean that in the sense of he seems like a veteran in the way he moves, but he has the athleticism of a 22-year-old. His mind, his just ability to have a complete skill set at his age this early on in an NFL career is insane. And then let's talk about CJ Stroud, who had one of the most, if not the most, insane rookie season we've seen from a quarterback ever. And finally, this is the shocker. New York Jets. Morgan Moses and Tyron Smith move me. Mike Williams moves me. I really like what they're doing here. I like the moves they're making. Garrett Wilson, Mike Williams, whoever they draft in the first round, and that defense, watch out for the Jets. I know a lot of y'all are laughing right now, like playoff ceiling, Dallas Cowboys. And I already said earlier I was a Cowboys fan. So yeah, I got to admit it. My Cowboys, that is their best chance this year. They are going to the playoffs, no NFC championship, no Super Bowl. I can admit that. I've admitted that for years. I'm a more realistic Cowboys fan, but I think this year is very clear. If they make the playoffs, they are very, very lucky. This Cowboys team is not the same Cowboys team from previous years. Their offensive line is nowhere near the level it was before. Zach Martin has regressed. Tyron Smith is gone. Tyler Smith is going to have to maybe change positions. They did not have a backup plan for Tyron Smith being a free agent. They didn't have a backup plan for Dak's extension. They didn't have a backup plan for CD's extension. They didn't have a backup plan for Micah's extension. They've let a lot of players walk. They didn't have backup plans for Tony Pollard either. This team is going to look very different next year. So let's talk about the other teams in the playoff ceiling. Cleveland Browns. They have an absolute insane roster, and I love their coaching, but Deshaun Watson still exists, and he's still their quarterback, and he's still getting paid $60 million a year. He's just not very good anymore. He's not the same player he was with the Texans, and he limits their ceiling. Next off, the Los Angeles Rams. I would have put them in a contender. I was so high on them after the guard signings, after Jonah Jackson, after re-signing Kevin Dotson, after just making sure Stafford lasts even longer. But Aaron Donald retired, and it put a cap to where I believe they were going to be. I really, really love Aaron Donald, and I really, really wanted to love this Rams team, but they're not the same without the second greatest defensive player of all time. Next off, the Green Bay Packers. They have a very high ceiling. They could surprise a lot of people. I probably would have put them in my next tier, but they are still going to be playoff ceiling. The Green Bay Packers, the last 30 years, they've been this way, not doing much outside of one Super Bowl. Maybe, okay, 3 Super Bowls. Still, I'm not going to say they make it. I'm not going to say they're a contender yet. I think they're a few more years. They're so young. They have even more draft picks this year. I think there's still time. Jacksonville Jaguars. If they make the playoffs by the hand of God, they would be lucky because this team has only put wide receiver threes around Trevor Lawrence. Their offensive line is still abysmal. Their defense is so weird. They're wasting Trevor Lawrence's time, and Trevor Lawrence gets a lot of crap, and he looked good this year if you go watch the tape. Trust me, he looked good. Next off, Tampa Bay. I think the NFC is weak enough for Tampa Bay to make the playoffs. I think they're always going to be capped by their ceiling of. Their defense isn't as good as it used to be. They lost a ton of pieces, and Baker Mayfield is more of a limited quarterback. I think he proved a lot of people wrong last year, but he's still not the quarterback that's going to take you over the hump. Simple as that. Finally, Miami Dolphins. This team is not the same team as last year because last year was their best chance in the Tua Tyreek Hill era. And I think that was it. Jalen Phillips and Bradley Chubb both. I think Jalen Phillips tore his Achilles. Bradley Chubb tore his ACL. Christian Wilkins is gone. He was the one healthy guy last year. Alex Van Ginkel, the guy that stepped up in their absences, is gone. Jerome Baker's gone. They did get some more linebacker help. I did like some of the pieces they did sign. A good corner with Kendall Fuller. Still, Vic Fangio is not there to help with defensive play calling. They're not the same team as last year. And offensively, Robert Hunt hurts. Connor Williams hurts. And I know they got a good replacement for him. But still, this team, I think they could be good in the regular season. But the AFC is a gauntlet. And I don't think they're going to get past the first round. So, tier 4. That could surprise people tier. So, this one's different. And I think it's different for a few other reasons. This does not mean that it's a team that could surprise people by making the playoffs. There are a few teams in here that would mean that. This could mean they surprise a few people by making the Super Bowl, surprise a few people by making a playoff run. Just anything in general. Teams that are developing and don't have a lot of expectations. So let's get into it. Colts. I made them the graphic. I like this team. I know they're cheap, but they are a team that has a lot of pieces, and they've always had a lot of pieces. I trust Anthony Richardson's development. I believe he's a very smart quarterback with athletic tools. I think he just needs to play a little slower. That is it. If you hear anything about him, you hear how smart the kid is. Just trust the process, and I think the Colts are going to be fine. Chicago Bears. I think a lot of people are going to put playoff expectations on them. Keenan Allen, DJ Moore, all the pieces on defense. But I think coaching holds them a little bit back, but I think they're going to surprise a lot of the deep NFL people. the people that have really, really watched a lot of this, because they do trust Caleb Williams. Those people love Caleb Williams. But I think Caleb Williams and DJ Moore and Keenan Allen, that's a really good fit. I really like the fit. It's just, I think at first it's going to look a little ugly, and I think they surprise people later on in the season. Atlanta Falcons, I think they could surprise a lot of people with like an NFC Championship run. And that's just a hot take I'm throwing out there. Please don't come at me in like 9 months when Kirk Cousins like throws some insane pick. But yeah, I think the Falcons have a lot of pieces that are ready to go. Raheem Morris is, I really believe in him as a head coach. This is his second chance, and they're going to get a defensive line piece in this draft. It's pretty clear. The receiving core is pretty good. Kyle Pitts. The offensive line, in terms of rushing attack, it's really good. Passing or pass blocking is not perfect. You could ask more of it, but I still like the offensive line. Bijan Robinson, Tyler Algier, that's a good running back group. I like the direction they're going in. I think they could surprise a lot of people. Arizona, I don't think they can make the playoffs necessarily this year. Maybe if Kyler puts on a masterclass, but I think they can surprise people by not being absolute garbage, because Kyler did take the steps coming back last year. And Jonathan Gannon proved he's not some joke of a head coach. I honestly thought that. And I don't make hot takes like that. And I really thought, what is this guy's deal? But I think next year, I think they surprise a lot of people. I think they have 8-9 wins. And finally, last team that could surprise people, Minnesota Vikings. They are the best team for a quarterback in this draft. They have Kevin O'Connell, who's one of the better head coaches in the league in terms of statistical play calling in general. How bad they struggled last year with injuries and how he almost took them to the playoffs. And Brian Flores is one of the best defensive minds in the league, who asked a lot out of talent last year, and then now they're going to have a lot more talent coming in with Jonathan Grenard, Van Ginkel, Blake Cashman. I trust this team. I think this team's going to get a quarterback and surprise a lot of people next year. I'm going to name the Los Angeles Chargers as well. They're the Chargers. They choke all the time. But Jim Harbaugh has always gotten the most out of his rosters. I like some of the personnel decisions he's made outside of offensive play calling. Greg Roman scares me for a Justin Herbert offensive system. They've also been very, very bad about receivers. But, and I say but, they have the 5th overall pick in this draft. And I think they're going to do something right with it. Tier 5. 1 year away from any expectations. And ironically, I did put the Giants as the cover and with Daniel Jones, because I think the Giants need to wait to get Daniel Jones' contract off the books for them to start making even more moves on offense. Their defense is getting locked up, and it's pretty secure. I like their defensive play calling that's coming in. He was the Titans' former DC, and they've had a good defense for the last few years. I know they struggled a lot, but that was more so of the pieces rather than the play calling. And I trust in their direction with Dable. Joe Sheen has done a phenomenal job outside of the Daniel Jones contract, and he put a clause in to make sure he could get out of it early. Next off is the Titans with this list, because I just brought up the Titans DC. They're going to wait a year to see what happens with Will Levis. I think expectations come in with what direction they're going to go in. But it's clear that they're setting themselves up for, if they need to go get a quarterback, a young rookie quarterback, they are in a good spot if Levis doesn't work out. Because Calvin Ridley, DeAndre Hopkins, those are good pieces. Tony Pollard, Tyjae Spears, 2 good running backs. Offensive line is rebuilding. Peter Skoronski moving to guard. If Joe Alt gets drafted by them, that's a good left side of the old line. Lloyd Cushing, good center to have. This team is rebuilding, obviously, but there are a lot of pieces coming into place. Trading for L'Jarius Sneed, obviously Jeffrey Simmons is already there. I like some of these pieces. I really do. I think they have like two holes in their defense now. And then next off, Washington. I think drafting a quarterback in this draft, if they have to get Drake May, I think that's my opinion. And then the expectations start coming in. They signed a lot of veterans because I know there's a lot of young guys coming in. They're building a culture there. They're establishing a lot of stuff. I think with a lot of the pieces on this roster, they're 1 year away from saying, okay, let's go in. Let's go all in. And finally, the last team, the Seahawks. I really like the Seahawks, and Mike McDonald loved them all of last year in his play calling with the Ravens. But there are going to be expectations about what you do next. And it's simple as that. Devon Witherspoon, Tyreek Woolen, DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, Kenneth Walker. Those are pieces to have. And JSN, don't get me started on that. And the offensive line has some little pieces here and there. You're going to have to commit to a direction. Keeping Geno Smith is not the move. Sam Howell, I think he has a plan in place, but those expectations are going to start coming in soon. And that's not even the last team I'm in this tier. Raiders, they are building a defense. We've seen that. Patrick Graham has had a really good defense last year, but they also signed Christian Wilkins. I think they're going to go for a corner in this draft. I think they need to start having expectations for offensive pieces because Devontae Adams is getting old. You just let Josh Jacobs walk. Jacoby Myers is one of the better wide receiver 2/3s in the league. Michael Mayer can develop into a good tight end. You have a decent O-line building into its own. If you're not going to take a corner, take someone like Fuaga for right tackle or Latham. But those quarterback expectations are going to come in soon, and you're going to have to answer them. So this is the tier called mid or God knows what they're doing. Just what my wife said when she left me. God knows what you're doing with your life. Please get it together. Oh, that's a try. Sorry. Okay. So let's talk about the Saints. Derek Carr, obviously, everyone knows he's just not a good quarterback that's going to take you over the hump. Derek Carr's okay. He'll put up a ton of stats at the end of games, but he's not there. Chris Olave is a good piece to have going forward. Cameron Jordan's old. Trevor Penny didn't work out. Ramczyk might retire. Kamara's getting a little older, but he's still got a little bit of juice left in him. Demario Davis is older. Tyrann Mathieu older. Marshawn Lattimore is going to have to get traded. All of these questions are there. And this team keeps digging and digging and digging. And last year when it looked like it was hopeful to okay, yeah, we can finally get out of this hole, go into a rebuild. We got some pieces. Please don't do anything stupid. And they did a lot of stupid stuff. Very weird. Very interesting. So let's go to the Saints of the AFC. Steelers. They aren't as bad of a cap position. They have more talent with TJ Watt, Highsmith, Hayward, Patrick Queen, who we don't even know if he's going to be very good with them because we haven't seen him be good without Roquan Smith. But yeah, the Steelers every year have to be 8-9, 9-8, or 9-8, sorry, and barely in the wild card and get blown out, or miss the playoffs just barely. Steelers are very interesting. They won't commit to a rebuild because of the Steelers. They're a winning franchise. But no one knows what they're really doing. Trading for Justin Fields, yeah, that's a fun trade. But Russell Wilson for a year is also very interesting. Offensive line, yeah, they've really done a good job there. I think they do even better in this draft. I think they've done a great job with defense for a long time. And they always find a way to get a receiver developed. But this team will never, ever commit to tanking for a quarterback for 1 year. They just won't. And Kenny Pickett didn't work out when they took him at 20 because they had the reach for him there. I don't know. The Steelers are weird. They're in a better spot than the Saints, but they'll never be where they used to be because they constantly keep letting themselves get blown out or make the playoffs and get blown out, where they constantly won't let themselves go in a rebuild because of pride. Finally, seventh and final tier. Honestly, this is the top 5 to 10 pick teams, and I'm going to go with the Broncos first because they're obviously setting themselves up for a tanking job this year. Yeah, they got some O-line pieces. Javonte Williams is a good running back. Courtland Sutton, who we don't even know what's going to happen yet, is a very good receiver. Patrick Surtain, one of the best corners in the NFL. Their defense turned it around last year. They'll probably draft a defensive end if they're not able to get a quarterback. However, this team cut Russell Wilson as a ton of dead cap because of him. Getting rid of Justin Simmons is a clear sign that you're not ready to do anything very soon. This team is very weird. They're trying to set themselves up to draft a quarterback probably in next year's draft. So they only have to worry about Russell Wilson's dead cap for another year after that, and then they can go build around the quarterback that they just drafted. Very interesting. We'll have to see with that. Next off, the Patriots. This team is not anywhere close to being like a contender soon. I'm not going to say they're 1 year away from expectations because they're not. This team is, I believe in Gerard Mayo. I like him a lot. I like his personality. I like what people say about him. But they have a lot of work to do, and I don't think it's going to be done in 1 year. Like, that's why the question is, do you get a quarterback and risk his development because of how bad your team is and how bad your receivers are and how questionable your O-line is, or do you draft a receiver and just wait for a quarterback later down the line because you're nowhere near ready? That's why that question's there, because this roster's nowhere near ready for anything soon. Mike Okonanu, or however you pronounce his name, I'm sorry, the right tackle slash guard, he's the sign that you're working to establish that O-line. Signing Kyle Duggar, also a sign that you like him. We're going to see. They always have good corners. They do have good corners. Christian Gonzalez is a very good corner. We'll have to see there. Panthers. This team has done everything right by Bryce this offseason, but their defense is going to suck. Their defense has been good for years, and they're going to flip the switch. Sorry. And it's going to be weird. It's going to be very weird because their defense has always been good, but now they're going to have to say, okay, well, we're going to have to sacrifice our defense so we can help build around Bryce. And maybe they get some money soon. They were in such a bad spot money-wise as well. And I hope if they get in the top 10 next year, which they probably will, they're able to finally find someone that like can really turn the franchise around. I'm not talking about quarterback. I still believe in Bryce. I'm talking about like another receiver for Bryce or someone for defense. We'll see. I hope y'all enjoyed the video. Honestly, I could be terribly wrong about everything I've said. That's the fun part about this business. But I hope I'm right. I hope y'all enjoyed it. Hope you have a great day. Son of the Sports out.